The officer's smirk was sharp as shattered glass. "A little Subaru like this cute. You borrow it from your boyfriend." He leaned closer, his reflection blocking the dying sun, as a sea of smartphones filmed her every move. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows across the quiet streets of Oak Crest, a small town nestled just a few miles from the hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery. For Sergeant Anya Petrova, the gentle hum of her 2012 Subaru Outback was a welcome reprieve. The engine, though aged, was a steady, reliable companion after the profound silence of her duty. At 30 years old, Anya carried an air of composure that seemed almost preternatural. It was a stillness forged in the crucible of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, a discipline honed by countless hours of solitary marching on the plaza of the tomb of the unknown soldier. Her shift had just ended. She had traded her immaculate, metal-adorned uniform for a simple gray t-shirt and worn-in jeans. The only hint of her extraordinary life was a small, silver pendant tucked beneath the collar of her shirt, its weight of familiar comfort against her skin. She was heading home, the scent of cut grass and impending twilight drifting through her open window. As she slowed for a stop sign near the Daily Grind, the town's beloved coffee shop, a flash of red and blue erupted in her rearview mirror. A police cruiser, sleek and predatory, was closing in fast. Anya's hands, which had been resting lightly on the wheel, tightened imperceptibly. Her training kicked in instantly. Assess, control, de-escalate. She signaled and pulled over smoothly, the gravel shoulder crunching under her tires. 2 officers emerged. The first, Officer Julian Vance, moved with a swagger that seemed too large for the sleepy town. His uniform was crisply pressed, his jaw set in a permanent sneer. His partner, Officer Lena Russo, followed a half-step behind, her expression more hesitant, her eyes taking in the scene with a quiet watchfulness. Vance strode to her window, his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. "Afternoon, ma'am," he began, his voice dripping with a condescending sort of charm. "You seem to be in a real hurry back there. Rolled right through that stop sign." Anya met his gaze, her own eyes a calm, steady blue. "I made a complete stop, officer," she stated, her tone even and respectful. "But I'm happy to provide my license and registration." She reached for the glove compartment, her movements economical and precise. She handed over the documents. Vance took them, his eyes flicking from her license photo to her face, a smirk playing on his lips. "Anya Petrova," he read aloud, drawing out her name. He then glanced at the weathered interior of her car. "This Subaru has seen better days. You sure it's safe to be on the road?" Anya's jaw tightened, but her voice remained a placid lake. "It's well-maintained and passes inspection every year, officer." He ignored her, his eyes scanning the quiet street. A few patrons from the coffee shop had started to notice the commotion, their curiosity piqued. "Uh-huh," Vance grunted, flipping through her registration with theatrical slowness. He then fixed his gaze back on her, his tone shifting from condescending to commanding. "Step out of the vehicle, please. We need to have a closer look around." Officer Russo shifted her weight, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Julian, maybe we just routine, Lena." He cut her off, his eyes never leaving Anya. He gestured with his head. "Out of the car. Now." Anya unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out of the Subaru. She didn't slam the door. She closed it with a soft, definitive click. She stood tall, her posture ramrod straight, her feet set exactly shoulder-width apart, a parade rest stance so ingrained it was second nature. The setting sun caught the highlights in her blonde hair, which was pulled back in a severe, practical bun. Officer Vance began a slow, deliberate circle of her vehicle, his knuckles rapping against the fender here. A scuff mark there. Lots of dings and scratches. Tells a story, you know? Usually a story about a distracted driver. He glanced at her. "You weren't on your phone, were you, Anya?" "My phone is in my bag on the passenger seat." "Officer," she replied, her gaze fixed on a point just over his shoulder. By now, the audience had grown. A small crowd of about a dozen people had gathered on the sidewalk in front of the Daily Grind. Smartphones were out, small red recording lights glowing in the twilight. Anya could hear their murmurs, a blend of sympathy and judgment. "What do you do for a living?" Vance asked, his tone laced with insinuation as he completed his circle and stood before her again. "Driving a car like this, I'm guessing it's not a corner office job. I serve in the United States Army," Anya said simply, offering no further detail. Vance let out a short, derisive laugh. "The Army? Doing what, filing papers? You don't look like you're in any uniform I recognize." "I'm off duty, right?" He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "I'm getting a real attitude from you. A lack of respect. We're gonna have to do a quick pat-down." Before she could respond, he nodded to Russo. "Check her." Russo hesitated, then stepped forward reluctantly. "Ma'am, just standard procedure." As her hands moved over Anya's torso, her fingers brushed against the small, hard object beneath her t-shirt. "What's this?" Vance, ever impatient, didn't wait for an answer. He reached out, hooked a finger under the chain, and pulled. The silver pendant came free, glinting in the cruiser's flashing lights. It was a finely detailed badge, a wreath encircling an inverted rifle, the symbol of a sentinel of the tomb of the unknown soldier. Vance squinted at it. "What is this, some kind of cheap souvenir? Some kind of wannabe thing?" He dropped it dismissively, letting it swing against her chest. Anya's eyes, for the first time, flashed with a cold fire. Her voice was low, but it cut through the evening air. "That is not a souvenir, officer. Is my badge." "Yeah, okay," he scoffed. "I've had enough of this. You're being evasive, uncooperative. That's obstructing an officer." He took a step back and pointed a thumb toward his cruiser. "You're coming with us to the station." Anya didn't move. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I said so." Vance's face was now flushed with anger, his professional facade crumbling. "Turn around. Hands behind your back. Now." The air crackled with tension. Officer Vance took a step forward, his hand moving toward his handcuffs. The crowd on the sidewalk held a collective breath, their phones held steady to capture the climax of the drama. Officer Russo looked on, her face a mask of conflict, knowing this had gone too far. Anya remained perfectly still, a statue of defiance in the face of escalating aggression. Then, a new sound pierced the quiet evening. It began as a low, deep rumble, a vibration felt more than heard. It grew rapidly, a powerful thrum that vibrated through the pavement and rattled the windows of the storefronts. Heads turned. Vance paused, annoyed by the interruption. Rounding the corner with impossible precision came a convoy that did not belong on the sleepy streets of Oak Crest. Leading the way was a formidable, matte black command SUV, its tinted windows revealing nothing of the occupants. Flanking it were two military Humvees, their sand-colored bodies and imposing frames a stark contrast to the civilian cars parked along the street. The three vehicles pulled up in a perfect, synchronized line, boxing in the police cruiser. The sound of their engines idling was a low growl that drowned out all other noise. Doors opened in unison, and from the vehicles emerged 8 soldiers. They were dressed in full combat gear, their movements sharp, economical, and utterly professional. They formed a silent, intimidating cordon. The driver's door of the black SUV opened last. A man stepped out, and the entire atmosphere shifted. He was tall, in his late 40s, with the sharp, intelligent eyes of a career officer. The silver oak leaf on his collar identified him as a major. This was Major Donovan, and he moved with an aura of absolute, unquestionable authority. He completely ignored Officer Vance and Officer Russo. His gaze swept past the stunned crowd, past the flashing police lights, and locked directly onto the lone figure standing by the old Subaru. Major Donovan strode across the pavement, his polished boots making no sound. He stopped exactly 3 feet in front of Anya Petrova. He drew himself up to his full height, his back rigid. Then, in a motion so crisp it seemed to slice the air, he raised his hand to his brow and delivered a flawless, powerful salute. Sergeant Petrova. His voice was a clear, commanding baritone that carried across the now silent street. "We were notified of a situation. Are you unharmed?" Anya, her composure never wavering, returned the salute with equal precision. "I am fine, Major. Just a misunderstanding." Officer Vance's jaw had fallen open. His sneer was gone, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shock. Russo's eyes were wide as saucers. The crowd was frozen, their phones still recording, but the context of what they were filming had been irrevocably, seismically altered. Major Donovan held his salute for a moment longer, a silent testament of respect, before slowly lowering his hand. He then turned, his body pivoting with military precision, to face the two police officers. His calm, analytical gaze settled on Vance. "Who is the officer in charge here?" he asked, his voice devoid of emotion, but carrying an undeniable weight. Vance swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. He fumbled to regain his composure, his authority utterly stripped away. I am Officer Vance. We were conducting a routine traffic stop. This individual was uncooperative. The Major's eyes narrowed, just slightly. "This individual," he said, his voice dropping a register, becoming as cold and hard as granite, "is Sergeant Anya Petrova. She is a sentinel at the tomb of the unknown soldier. One of the most disciplined, decorated, and respected non-commissioned officers in the United States Army." He took a step toward Vance, who instinctively took a step back. "Are you aware of what that means, officer?" Donovan continued, his voice low but resonating with contained fury. "To earn the badge you so carelessly dismissed as a trinket, a soldier must endure a trial that washes out 90% of all candidates. They must memorize 35 pages of Arlington history, down to the placement of every single grave. They must be ablito, flawlessly perform 7 different types of walks and 9 different guard changes. Their uniform alone takes over 4 hours to prepare for each shift, and it must be perfect. Not good, not great, but perfect." He gestured toward Anya, who stood watching, her expression unreadable. "This soldier, Officer Vance, voluntarily endures blistering heat, freezing blizzards, and hurricanes to stand guard over the honored dead. They do this not for fame or for money, but for duty, for honor. They represent the absolute best of us. And you threatened to arrest her for being uncooperative?" A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. The word tomb guard was whispered from person to person, laced with a newfound reverence. A man in the front of the crowd slowly lowered his phone, his face etched with shame. An older woman clasped her hand to her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. Vance's face had gone from flushed red to a pasty white. He looked from the imposing major to the silent soldiers, and finally to Anya. He saw her now not as a difficult woman in a beat-up car, but as something else entirely. I didn't know," he stammered. "You didn't ask," Donovan corrected him, his voice sharp as a bayonet. "You saw a woman in an old car, and you made an assumption. You've disrespected her. You disrespected her badge, and in doing so, you disrespected every soldier she has sworn an oath to protect." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Your job is to serve and protect, not to harass a national hero on her way home from work." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hum of the military engines. Major Donovan held Officer Vance's gaze for a long moment before turning back to Anya. "Sergeant, we can provide you with an escort home." Anya gave a slight shake of her head. "That won't be necessary, Major. Thank you for the support." Her voice was calm, gracious, showing no trace of triumph. "I can handle it from here." Donovan nodded, understanding. "Always, Sergeant." He gave her a final, respectful nod, then turned and, with his soldiers, efficiently packed back into their vehicles. As quickly as they had arrived, the convoy departed, their rumble fading into the distance, leaving a profound quiet in their wake. The crowd began to disperse, talking in hushed, awed tones. Vance and Russo were left standing on the pavement, looking utterly defeated. An hour later, the bell over the door of the Daily Grind chimed. Anya was sitting in a corner booth, a steaming mug of black coffee cradled in her hands. Marco, the cafe's owner, a kind, gray-haired man who treated her like a daughter, had insisted she come in to decompress. The bell chimed again. Officer Vance and Officer Russo entered, looking deeply uncomfortable. Their police chief, having received a call from a very high-ranking official at the Pentagon, had ordered them to find Sergeant Petrova and offer a formal, unequivocal apology. They approached her booth hesitantly. "Sergeant Petrova?" Vance began, his voice barely a whisper. Anya looked up and gestured to the seat opposite her. "Officers." They sat. Marco appeared and silently placed 2 mugs of coffee before them. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Russo broke the silence. "What you do? I've seen it on TV. I never understood. I'm so sorry." Vance stared down at his hands. "I was out of line. There's no excuse. I judged you from the moment I saw you, and I was wrong. Completely and utterly wrong." He finally looked up, his eyes filled with genuine shame. "I have to ask why. Why do you do it? That life, it's so rigid." Anya took a slow sip of her coffee. She set the mug down and looked at them, not with anger, but with a profound, weary sadness. "It's not for me," she said softly. "It's for them, the ones in the tomb. They gave everything, their futures, their families, their names. They have no one to tell their story, so we walk for them. Every step we take is a word in their story. Every 21 seconds we pause is a moment of silence for their sacrifice. It's not rigid. It's a language. I'm not guarding a grave. I'm keeping a promise." The simple, powerful honesty of her words hung in the air. Vance felt a lump form in his throat. He had seen her as an obstacle, a problem to be solved. He had never once considered the weight of the promise she carried under a simple gray t-shirt. The next morning, in the office of the Oak Crest police chief, Major Donovan sat across from a very sober-faced Chief Miller. The meeting was professional, but the undercurrent was unmistakable. What happened yesterday was a failure of protocol and, more importantly, a failure of respect, Donovan stated, his hands clasped on the table. "Sergeant Petrova is not seeking retribution, but we are seeking assurance that this will not happen again. To any service member." Chief Miller nodded, his expression grim. "I agree. Officer Vance's conduct was unacceptable. This isn't just about one officer," Donovan countered. "It's about a culture of understanding. I'm proposing a new partnership, a mandatory training day for your officers at Fort Myer. We won't teach them tactics. We'll teach them what our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines do. We'll show them the tomb. We'll teach them what that Sentinel's badge really means. It's not about rules, Chief. It's about honor." Miller extended his hand across the desk. "It's a deal, Major. Consider it done." A week later, in the packed briefing room of the Oak Crest Police Department, Chief Miller announced the new initiative. As he spoke, Officer Russo stood up from the back of the room. "Chief, if I may," she asked, her voice clear and steady. All eyes turned to her. "Last week, I was part of a mistake. I stood by while a good person, a true hero, was disrespected. I learned something that day. I learned that our uniform doesn't give us the right to judge. It gives us the responsibility to understand. Every person we stop has a story we don't know. Our job is to listen to it, not to write it for them." A quiet murmur of assent filled the room. Officer Vance, standing near the front, gave a slow, solemn nod. As the sun set once more over Arlington, Sergeant Anya Petrova stood her post. Her uniform was flawless, her rifle perfectly balanced, her movements a symphony of precision and grace. She marched her 21 steps. She turned, faced the tomb, and paused, the weight of a nation's gratitude resting on her shoulders. The crowd of visitors watched in reverent silence, their phones in their pockets, their hearts full. In a world so quick to judge, one woman's quiet strength served as a powerful reminder. Honor isn't found in a uniform or a badge, but in the respect we choose to give one another. Every person carries a story. All we have to do is be willing to listen. What does honor mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please, always comment with respect. If this story moved you, consider sharing it and subscribing for more tales of quiet heroes.